This is Gemara Shavuos Daf Yomi Zayin, and as we pick it up, 2 lines from the bottom on to Zayin and Beis, we like all the incredible Torah, Talmud Torah Berabim, to be an amazing schos refuah shalema for Tinaik ben Miriam Ahuva b'seich sha'ar Chayli Yisrael. Says the Gemara, Bai Rava asks Rava, Sarich shehiyah lemalkus or ain't sarich shehiyah lemalkus? When it comes to that you're staying in the Beis Hamikdash long enough, lishtachavais, which we explained is the chilik between bowing al berkayim on one's knees versus doing an act of ishtachavaya of pishir yadayim v'raglayim. So asks Rava, does one have to be the long enough to be malchus? Or in sar shehiyah lemalkus, or this din to be the long enough is not a din in malchus. Explains the Gemara. Likar ban gemiri shehiyah lemalkus lo gemiri shehiyah. Is it dafka din by carbon? Now where does this concept that you have to be there for a certain amount of time, this amount of pishir yadayim v'raglayim, comes from? Says the Gemara, perhaps that's a din in carbon. Dilma, as we turn over to Yudzayin and Aleph, or maybe Bifnim Gemiri Shia. Maybe it's any time that one is Bifnim. As Rashi says, a case of Tuma that occurs in the Azara. Gemiri Shia. Dilma Bifnim Gemiri Shia. La Yishana Lekarbam, La Yishana Lemalkis, and it is irrelevant what are the specifics, whether it's going to create a chiyah, malchus, or carbon, but only be if one is there for such a requisite period of time. Says the Gemara, Teiku, we're going to have to wait for Mashiach. Bai Rava asks Rava another shayla. Tola atzmai ba'avir azara. If someone, after he's tamei, suspends himself in the airspace of the azara, and he's in the airspace, the amount of time, as Rashi on the second line points out, Kidei Shia, the amount of time to bow down, Ma'u, what's the din? Explains the Gemara. Ki gemiri Shia, Shia debasa shachavaya. Delabasa shachavaya, loy gemiri. Maybe it's a form of Shia, being there, that you could theoretically have the amount of time to bow down. But if it's not Shaykh, why isn't that Shaykh? Because you're floating in the air. Perhaps not. Dilma, no. Anytime one is bifnim should be gemir loishna tebas shachavaya v'loishna delavas shachavaya. Says the Gemara. Teiku, once again we have to wait for Mashiach. Bai Rav Ashi, a third shayla. Timi atzoim b'mezin mahu. What is the halacha of one purposely made oneself tamei while he is in the Beis Hamikdash? What's the shayla? Explains the Gemara. By Nes Gemiri Shia, but amazing, like Gemiri Shia. Maybe the whole concept of Shia doesn't apply, b'mezid. However, Delma, anytime it's Tuma Bifnim, Gemiri Shia, Lishna Bainis Lishna b'mezid. And on Shaila number 3, says the Gemara, take. And we continue with Shaila number 4. By Rav Hashi, Nazir b'kever by Yishia l'malkis. Einay tzarich. Says the Gemara, Nazir, standing on a grave, is it a din that once he's there long enough he gets a malchus, or not? What are the study ashayla? What are the different parts of the question? Bifnin gemiri shia babachotz. Says in Bifnin, this isn't inside the Beis Hamikdash like gemiri shia. I don't buy this gemiri shia. It's din nine bachotz. Says the Gemara, Teiku. We start today with 4 shayla of Rava. Unfortunately, none of them receiving answers. We continue at the 2 dots, smack in the middle of the page. Yudzayin and Aleph, says the Gemara. Baloi barucha chayiv biksara bater v'chulu. If you came out of the Beis Hamikdash in a long, elongated way, you're chayiv carbon. But if you went out as quick as possible, you're pater. Amar Rav Kitzara she'amarnu afilu ekev etzad gadol. When we talk about the short way, it means even if you walk with the heel next to the toe, very short steps, even if it takes an entire day to get out. But if the route that you took is shorter, then you are potter. But by Rava Shiyosei Mahu, says Rava, what if it takes him some time, he pauses in between to get out, and then in totality, it would have been Kedei Hishtach Avaya. Ma'usha Starfu, says Marvativ Shleimidi Day. Hasam Loisha, Hasam says Marv Loisha, so you get Uriah from there. Boyimine Abayim Rabba, Sabaya As Rabba, Baloi Baruka Shir Ksara Ma'u. If you went down the long road, the amount of time it would have taken to go down the short road. Now, do we say Shir Gemiri v'chibayla barucha Shir Ksara Potter? It has to do with how long it took you, and therefore, if you went in the amount of time, it would have been for the Ksara your Potter. Or perhaps Dafka Gemiri barucha Chayiv Dafka barucha your Chayiv and Ksara you are Potter. Amarle. Says the Gemara that the reason is usher by going by the long way is not possible. Overriding it for him, even if he runs out. So Masler of 05 lens lebadom elodikaim alon tamei sheshimesh v'misa atamei. Kainu is Tami was Mishamish, he serves in the base of Migdash. Schayim Isa, Heichim Mishkachas. Eat Eloishia, if he's over there long enough, Heichim Avid. Avoida, how did he perform the Avoida? And he did Shah Bar Karasu, and if he made it, was there long enough, then he's Chayiv Karis. Says the Gemara 2 lines to the bottom, Amr Bishlam, if you're going to tell me, Shiur Gemiri Mishkachas La Anis Nafshay. The Ksara of Avid Avaida, because it's that amount of time. But as we turn over to Yedzainim and Beis articulates the Gemara. However, what's the problem? Eli Itmar Dafka Gemiri Hechi Mishkachas Law, says the Gemara. But if you say like Rabbah, then the Chachamim were saying the B'Sayra very miduyak, and then the Shaila is going to be how can we have a case that the Kohen is doing the Avodah and he'll not get Karis. It would seem that in every scenario, from the mere waiting itself, he's going to be Chayiv Karis, says Gemara Maraya Mai Kosha. I'll tell you how, Mishkachas La Kigoin Shabbat B'Ksara, he went down the short road, V'Hafach B'Tzinaira, and while he's walking, he turned over the fork, one of the karbanos that were on the Mizbeach. Ravuna, Tamar Ravuna, 4 lines down, Yedzayim and Beis. Zar sheshavach b'tzinoira, Chayim Misa. For Zar to get involved, stick his hands in, and then he would be Chayiv Misa. Gufa, says Gemara, let's delve a little bit deeper. Amar Ravuna, Zar sheshavach b'tzinoira, Chayim Misa. Hechidami, it lo yafach lo me'achla. If he didn't do it, then loy me'achla would not have been consumed. Pshit, avidu loy hafach v'anami me'achla. Micah of it says more loy tzricha, di loy hafach b'ho ma'achli b'tarti, would take longer, and this mitigated in a shorter fashion. B'tarti shah, v'ashla b'achli b'chad shah. Ay, v'okam ashla l'chol karev v'nezara. He, b'chol karev avoida, avoidi, amar avaishia, bi'ina de'ema milsa mistafina, me'chavre. Says Rav Hoshia, I want to say something, but I'm afraid of my friends. But then he says as follows: all outside of his nose, he's still tar. That's the reason why. So Tananami Hachi, and with this we conclude. Gagin halalu in eichlin shem gajin gajin jachlin shem gajin kalim. V'tamei shechzer gagin lihecha. If you go through the roof, you're going to be potter. Shenamar ve'lamikdash lo yisavu, and therefore how's it lo yisavu? Only derech via. That's going in the normal way. Asra Tairo. I'll stop at the two dots. We'll pick it up from here. B'siyata Dishmaya.